Okay, hello everybody. We are studying Masechet Eruvin, Daf Lamed He 35, starting on 34b. The topic tonight that runs throughout this Mishnah and the next Mishnah is what happens when the Eruv exists, but it's inaccessible for one reason or another. All right, the idea is that I can place my Eruv before Shabbat starts, and that will be my designated place. But I have to be able to have access it at least during Ben Hashemashot, right? At least until it gets dark. And so if it's in a place where there's no way I can get to it, then that would be a problem. Here in our Mishnah, we're talking about if it's in a closet, I lost the key. So I do know exactly where it is, I just can't get to it. Next Mishnah, which we'll do today, is if it's outside the Techum, or if something fell on it, or it burnt, and so therefore it's not accessible for other reasons, or it's tameh, and so on. Okay, so we did actually study this Mishnah. I'll just remind ourselves there's two opinions. If I put the Eruv in a cupboard and locked it, and I lost the key, Tanakama says that's fine. The Eliezer says if you don't know where the key is, then it's no good, right? Because then you cannot access it. So our main question is, for Tanakama, why is it okay? If you don't have a key and you can't access it, then why should that be a good Eruv? So that was the first question. Why? He's in one place, and the Eruv is in a different place. So our first answer was Rav and Shemuel said, we're talking about not a closet made out of wood. That's going to be the next answer. But rather a closet or house or storehouse made out of bricks. And the bricks are not cemented together. So therefore, it's pretty easy. This is not a storehouse that would keep robbers away. This is more you put grain or fruit in there to keep them safe from animals, but they're relatively easy to access. And we have a Mishnah in Masechet Besa. Besa is talking about the laws of Yom Tov. And in that Mishnah, there's a machloket that says, bayit, if you have a house and you filled it with fruit, and it opened, the wall fell, you can go and take the fruit, even though you put the fruit away in a storehouse, and generally that would be mukseh. However, we're going to see this applies on Yom Tov only. Yom Tov, because we want to make the holiday happy, and the laws of preparing food are permitted, and so the laws related to that are more lenient. Therefore, we say you're allowed to go and get the food. Rabbi Meir goes further and even says you can actually remove the bricks and access the food inside. And therefore, the analogy to our Mishnah here is would be the same idea, that although the Eruv is inside a brick closet, but it doesn't have cement in it, and therefore I can simply go and get remove some bricks according to the B'meir and access it. So just because I lost the key doesn't mean it's accessible. All right, all this is to say that the truth is Tanakama is puzzling. If you lost the key, why should it be? And if it was actually a case where it was in a safe, right, and there's no way to get into the safe without the key, then it would not be good according to anybody. All right, so we're limiting the permission of the Mishnah to only a case where it's bricks that were not mortared, and to be Meir's opinion, I can just go and take it. All right, that's what we were up to. Now, we have the Bizera says, that whole Mishnah that said you're allowed to remove bricks and access the fruit inside was only talking about on Yom Tov is allowed because the laws of accessing food are more lenient there, but not on Shabbat. So therefore, we thought that our Mishnah is talking about on Shabbat. So we say, Hachinami b'Yom Tov. This is, you're right. We have to limit our Mishnah further, that it only applies the permission. This is Tanakama in our Mishnah, who says if your Eruv is in a locked closet, it's okay. That's only in a brick without mortar closet, and it's only on Yom Tov. All right, and we're going to question this. I mean, this doesn't really look like what it's talking about. Im ba'ir abad eruvo eruv. Im basadeh abad en eruvo eruv. B'yom tov mali ir mali sadeh. We have a Tosefta. Tosefta is giving like a commentary on the Mishnah, and this is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. So remember, Rabbi Eliezer is the opinion here, who's machmir. Okay, he says no. If you lost the key, it's no good. And in this baraita, Rabbi Eliezer makes the difference between whether you lost the key in a city or in a field. Well, what's the difference? If you lost the key in the city, then you can go and retrace your steps. And you'll find it somewhere, assuming it's found within the city. There is an eruv in the courtyards, and so you can take it from one courtyard to the next, and you can bring it home. So in the city, there's a way to retrieve and access the key. If you lost the key in a field, then there's no way to get it. Or if the eruv is in the field, right? There's no way to carry it there, because there's no way you can't make an eruv around the whole field. Remember, we're mixing two different eruvin here. We put the eruv for techumin in the closet, right? But now we're talking about that I can carry the key to open that for the eruv techumin, because there's an eruv chatzerot. All right, that might be a little confusing, but hopefully not. Okay, now all that is talking about on Shabbat, because on Shabbat you can't carry. That would be the problem in the field. Right? If it's Yom Tov, then what's the difference between a city and a field? On Yom Tov, you're allowed to carry everywhere. So even if it's on Yom Tov, then it doesn't make sense for the Eliezer to make a difference between them. So instead, we reread the Mishnah as follows: Hasure mechasera, which means it's missing words. It's not clear when it says mechose mechasera. This term, does it mean that we actually have a wrong version of the Mishnah and this is the correct version, or we're just adding explanation, but you're not actually changing it? In this case, probably the second, because we're adding quite a lot of words here. And this is really what the teaching is, should be, how it should be understood. So Tanakama says, if you put it in a closet and you lost the key, that's okay. That's only on Yom Tov. Okay, we have to say this because only on Yom Tov would you be able to take off the bricks and access it. Aval b'Shabbat and eruvo eruv. On Shabbat, we have the mukseh is more strict, and you can't take off the bricks just to access the food. Nimsa hamaftayach ben ba'ir ben basadeh and eruvo eruv. If you found the key, if it's on Shabbat, it doesn't matter where it is, because you can't get it there, so it's no good. Rabbi Eliezer Omer ba'ir eruvo eruv basadeh and eruvo eruv. What we're doing now is combining the Mishnah with that baraita that we read. And so the Rabbi Eliezer is talking about on Shabbat, if you find the key in the city, then the eruv techumin is good, because you can get it to its place. You can get the key to the closet and open it. In the field, you can't carry. All right, good. So now we're able to resolve so far all the traditions. Now, ba'ir eruvo eruv k'Rabbi Shimon. Damar echad gagot ve'echad chaserot echad karpefot v'shut achat hen lakelim sheshabtu betochan. We have to be assuming that we're following the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. This is different. Rabbi Shimon in a different place. We saw this a couple of times before. Who says that different kinds of enclosed areas can all join together, even though they have technically differences. So roofs, courtyards, and enclosed fields, which generally are a little bit more problematic than just courtyards. If an item was there from before Shabbat, then I can move it from one of those types of Reshut HaYachid to another. And that would have to be the case here, because if I lost the key, a few blocks away, I'd have to be carrying it on top of a roof in someone's garden, someone's backyard, in order to get it back to me. Vesadeh and eruvo eruv kerabanan. And however, in the field, there you cannot carry, and that follows the opinion of the rabbis, because that is a karmelit, and everybody would agree with that. All right. Okay, so that's all one answer. All right. So once again, to review where we are, if I have an eruv techumin, I put it in a closet because I want that to be my center for Shabbat, so I can walk 2,000 amot all around that. But then I lose the key, right? So Tanakama says it's okay. It's still fine. The B'Eliezer says no. Why does Tanakama say it's okay? Because it's still accessible. It's in a brick house. It has no mortar, and so on Yom Tov, and therefore it's okay. Now this seems we have to add a lot of assumptions for this, and so now we have a second answer. No, it's a wood closet, which is what we thought to begin with. And what's the issue? The first opinion, Tanakama, who says it's permitted, thinks that we consider a closet or armoire to be a utensil. And the law is that the prohibition of building and dismantling only applies to a structure like a house, but not to a utensil. right? In other words, if I take a utensil and a pot or something, then I smash it, right? That does not violate sitira. It doesn't violate the building or dismantling. And so therefore, they would say as follows: if I put my eruv, I put my bread in the closet and I lost the key, I can go and break the closet, right? It's made out of wood and I'm allowed to break it. And that's not a problem of breaking something down, which would be a problem, like dismantling a tent or a house or something like that. So that's Tanakama says it's okay. And the second opinion, the Eliezer, thinks that we consider a closet like that to be a tent, more of a permanent structure, and therefore breaking it open would be dismantling, which is one of the 39 malachot, and that's what their argument is about. Okay, good. And so they're arguing about the same machloket as follows: Beplugdat hani taneh etnan hikish al gabesh shida teva umigdal temein. We have another Mishnah that has a similar case. I mean, it's a different halacha altogether, but the same principle. You have someone who is a zav, right? Someone who's tameh, and he knocks on a closet. That closet is tameh. Rabbi Nechemiah says it's okay. Now, what would be the machloket here? Why would one say it's okay and one say it's not? He's knocking on it and it moves, right? It causes it to move. One thinks that it's a utensil. So the one who thinks it's a utensil, then therefore a utensil can receive tum'ah. All right. So therefore, if he knocks on it, then it will receive tum'ah. So that's the first opinion here, tamein. And the other opinion says it's ohel. A permanent structure cannot become tameh. If a zav goes and touches a house does not become tameh, or a tent. And so therefore he thinks it's like a tent, and that's why it does not become tameh. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Nechemiah and Rabbi Shimon. And so now we can match up this opinion with the one above. So according to the Tanakama, who says you can break open the closet, that's because it's a kli. So he would say it can become tameh. So he's actually mekel in one case and machmir in the other case. And the opposite of Eliezer, who says it's considered like a tent and therefore I cannot dismantle it, and that's why the eruv is inaccessible. He would say that it becomes tameh when the zav moves it. All right, good. So now that could work. However, we're going to have a problem with this. Amar Abaye, it is bera. Wait, does that make sense? Abaye objects. Vatanya, ohel v'nisat tameh, keli ve'eno nisat tahor, v'katan sefa, v'im hayu nisotin temein. Ze haklal, nisat mechamat kochot tameh, mechamat re'ada tahor. So according to this baraita, our ohel, a tent, if it moves, it's tameh. If it's a utensil and it doesn't move, it's tahor. The point here is that it doesn't matter whether it's a tent or a utensil. The only question is it moving or not when he knocks onto it? So all that matters is if it moves or not. And even if it's a tent and it moves, it will still be tameh. And even if it's a utensil and he knocks on it, maybe it shakes a little, but doesn't move, then that's okay. So the principle is anything that moves because of his force is tameh. If it moves because of some vibration, like if he, just pounds on the floor, jumps on the floor, and it moves because of that, that would be indirect. So therefore, you see that this machloket does not apply, has nothing to do with being a utensil or not. It only matters, it depends on moving it or not. And therefore, this is not a good proof for the machloket above, in saying it depends on being a utensil or not. In fact, everybody agrees that if something moves because he pushes it or knocks it, anything would be tameh. And if it's because he just jumps and causes vibrations indirectly, everybody agrees with tahor. The machloket is actually in a small area. If he knocks it and that knocking it causes it to shake, right? So is that shaking enough to make it tameh? One says that is like moving, and one says that's not like moving. Okay, so we can apply that machloket to our case, the one about tumah, to our case of an eruv. Now, matnitin b'may mokminan la. Okay, now let's go back to our Mishnah. We went on a tangent here. So what is the case of our Mishnah? So now we have a third explanation of our Mishnah. Right? Again, the Mishnah said if I put my bread in a closet to be my eruv, and that'll be my center, and I lost the key, and so we have a machloket there, and the Tanakh says it's okay, and we're wondering, like, why is it okay? Because it's inaccessible, and everyone agrees that you have to access it. And so now we have a third answer. Abaye Rabba says it's talking about a lock that's tied with a leather strap. In other words, it's not a very secure lock. Maybe it's a lock just for, kids don't get into it or animals won't get into it. But if I take a knife, I can cut the leather strap. So I don't really need the key. I can access it simply with a knife. So what's the problem with that? Well, the question is, can I use a knife, not for food, but rather for cutting the strap to open up a closet? Tanakama who says it is allowed. This eruv is a good eruv. He thinks it's accessible because you can take the knife and open it. His opinion is the only things that you can't use, only utensils you can't use are a large saw and a blade of a plow. These are large, expensive objects that are made for a certain use, and you would never take like a jackhammer to open up a bag of potato chips, right? So that's a special use. But anything else, like a regular knife, although you usually use it to cut vegetables, but it's allowed. There's no problem with mukseh. You're allowed to use it for this, so to open the closet, and that's why it is accessible. For Rabbi Eliezer, if you remember back at Masechet Shabbat, Rabbi Nechemiah was the most stringent opinion regarding mukseh. He says you're only allowed to use an item for its designated use. So if I have a spoon, I have to use a spoon just for eating soup. I can't use a spoon to crack open a nut or something like that. It's only for its own use. And therefore, if I have a knife, I cannot take the knife and open up a closet, the strap of the closet with it. And that's why the Eliezer agrees with that opinion. And that's why he thinks that if I lost the key, then the eruv is inaccessible in the closet. All right, so that concludes that discussion of that Mishnah. And so once again, we had a machloket, and the Tanakh Kama was very strange because he says you can eruv in a locked closet is okay, and we saw three different options, three different solutions. We had to limit the case in some way. That it's either talking about bricks that are not mortared and that's on Yom Tov, or it's talking about a closet made out of wood and I can break it open, but that didn't work out with other sources. And then this one, that it's just a leather strap that I can cut. And so that's why, but the point of the common denominator of all three is that it actually has to be accessible in some way, right? Everyone would agree that if I put my eruv in some place and it's locked and I don't have the key and there's no other way to to get in there without violating Shabbat, without bringing a locksmith and all that, so it would be a problem. So right, it has to be accessible. Okay, so now next Mishnah, which is another set of cases where I cannot access the eruv. Nitkalgel chutz latechum. Okay, this poor guy, he takes his eruv and he puts it outside his city, and the problem is where he put it is fine. He can get there. It's within the techum, but on Shabbat it rolled away. Maybe some wind came and it pushed it outside the techum, so he can't even. He can only walk right up to there, but he can't reach it because the wind pushed it outside his reach. Okay, poor guy. Or nafal alav gal, or if a pile of stones fell on it, an avalanche or something, it was in a house and now it's under a pile of rubble, he can't get it. Or nisraf, all of a sudden it was a fire and burnt. Or nitiruma v'nitmet, let's say a kohen put it there, and or even maybe not a kohen, right? We saw it in the previous Mishnah. Anyway, it was turuma that can only be eaten by a kohen and has to be tahor, unless it became tameh. A rat came and died on top of it, and now it's tameh, so it's accessible, but it can't be eaten. All these cases, if it happened before on Friday, right? If the wind blew it out or it fell, and became inaccessible on Friday afternoon, then it's not an Eruv. If all this happened after it got dark, after Sete Kohabim, then it's okay. And so this is a good source for that principle that we've been using again and again, that the Eruv only has to be accessible during Ben Hashemashot. Okay. If it happened after it got dark, it doesn't matter. Im Safek, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda Omerim, Harezeh Hamar Gamal. What if you're not sure, right? You put it there Friday afternoon, and you went home. You come the next day and you see that you see a dead rat on it, right? Or you see that it got burnt. Now you don't know, did it happen before it got dark or after it got dark? If it's before it got dark, it's okay. After, that's bad. After it got dark, it's okay. And you don't know if you have a safek. So we have a number of opinions here. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda say it's a problem. If you're not sure that it was intact during dark, then this is called Hamar Gamal, a fantastic phrase. It's talking about Hamar, not Hamor. Hamar, with a dagesh in the middle, is a donkey driver. Gamal is not a camel, but rather a camel driver. And so what does this mean? Donkey driver, camel driver. Well, the way things work is that a camel, usually you pull from the front. Hamor, you push, right? You prod from behind. And so let's say a person has to do both, right? Has to lead a camel and a donkey, then, and they're going in different ways, he's going to be stuck, right? He can't go either way because he's being pulled and pushed in different directions at the same time, right? So that's the point. Or think of it at, he has to be in front of the animal and back of the animal at the same time. You can't be a hamad and a gamal, right, at once. And so this guy has the same problem because he has a safek eruv. Let's say he's in the city here and he put his eruv 2,000 amot to the east. But now he's not sure where his eruv is. He's not sure if it was intact or not. So he's not sure if his place is there or here. So we can't go anywhere, he can't go this way, and he can't go further that way because he's being pulled and pushed in different directions. In other words, the safek, we have to be machmir and assume that it might be good and it might not be good, and therefore he cannot walk outside either, 2,000 amot away from either one. Okay, that's the machmir opinion. The mekel opinion is Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Shimon omrim safek eruv kasher. If you're not sure, it's okay. You can rely on it. You can assume that it was there. I put it there before and it was fine. I can assume that it was there and it was intact until after dark. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Abtolmos he'aid mishum hamisha zekenim al safek eruv shekasher. We have the sage Abtolmos. We don't know a lot about him, but he testified in the name of 5 ancient elders that this eruv is fine. Even though you're not sure, the whole thing is the midrabanan, and so we can assume that it's okay. There are some stories about a certain Abtolmos who was given special permission to dress and cut his hair like Romans because he had special special ties. He was a liaison to the Roman government. So but perhaps it's that person, maybe not. Okay, so that's the Mishnah, right? A number of interesting cases, and the main principle is that it happened before or after, and right, if we have a safek, Rabbi Meir and Yehuda say it's no good, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Shimon say it is good. All right, let's analyze each of these cases. Nitkalgel chus latechum, amar Rabba, lo shanu ela shnitkalgel chus l'arba amot, aval letoch arba amot, hanoten eruvo, yesh lo arba amot. We saw this principle already, that if I put my eruv in a certain spot, then I create a virtual reshut hayachid for amot all around me, right? And that goes up to heaven. And so therefore, even if I at the cities here, I go 2,000 amot and place it right at the limit, at the 2,000 amot limit, all right? So at that spot where I placed it, I actually have 4 amot more, right? Because that's my center, so I can walk around in that 4 amot. And so therefore, if it rolled within just 4 amot outside of that limit, I still have, extra 4 amot to go and get it. But beyond that, it would not be good. Okay, nafal alav gal, a pile of some rubble fell on it. Now, it might have thought that if he wanted, he can go and take it. Perhaps it's in a place where he could clear away the stones and he can still get it, right? So we might have thought that it would be okay for that reason, but it's not. Well, why not? Well, rubble is mukseh, and so that would be a problem. But now let's analyze this. Since I only has to be accessible during Ben Hashemashot, the only problem, if rubble fell on it, right, what would be the problem? That the stones are mukseh, but mukseh is only midrabanan. And according to the B, right, as we saw in the previous couple of dapim, according to the B, I'm allowed to violate any drabanan during Ben Hashemashot if I need to. And so therefore, lema matnitin de la kedebi, de kedebi ha'amar kol davar shu mishum shevut, lo gazru ala ben hashemashot. The B says that things are like that are midrabanan, like mukseh, are permitted before it gets dark, and I only have to access the eruv, my bread, before it gets dark, and therefore, why shouldn't I be allowed to recover it? So therefore, we have to say that our Mishnah is not like it be, but rather like Rabbanan, who say, I am not allowed to violate the Rabbanan during Ben Hashemashot. So now we're limiting the Mishnah. We'd prefer not to limit the Mishnah to only one opinion. So we try another way. No, you can interpret that the Mishnah is according to the B, and it's buried in such a way that there's a lot of stones on it, and I would have to go get a tool, a hoe, or a spade in order to get it out from under there. And now that's already a problem mid-deoraita. If I need a shovel and a hoe and I'm removing dirt to get to it, then that would be plowing or building, and so that's why even the B would say you can't do that during Ben Hashemashot. Okay, so we figured out that case. Now we're going to try to figure out why do we need both of these cases of the case here where it rolled out and it's not accessible because of that, and the other case where rocks fell on it. Isn't it the same principle? It's not accessible. So we answer, Usrichi, I need both of the cases. Ditananit galgel, mishum deleta gabe. If you say because it rolled out, it's not with me. I can't get to it. It's physically not close to me. But if rocks fell on it, it's right here. It's right next to me. I'm like, right there. I can almost see it through the cracks. And so I might say that it isn't eruv, because it's close to, it's about proximity. So this Mishnah has to include that case to say proximity doesn't help if you can't actually get it. And if I had only the case of the rocks, I would say, well, that's covered. There's no way you're going to get it. But the one that rolls out, maybe I might think that possibly a wind could come and blow it back, just like the wind blew it out. And so I might consider that to be a good eruv because potentially it will come back. And so therefore the Mishnah has to include that case too to teach me that, no, even a case like that would not be a good eruv. That's called inaccessible. All right, good. Now the next case is nisraf or tiruma v'nitmet. It was burnt, or if it was tiruma and became tameh, and then the kohen can't eat it. No one can eat it. So lamali, why do we need both of those cases? It's also the same principle. It's not accessible, not edible. Tana nisraf lo diacha kocho de Rabbi Yosef. Tana tiruma v'nitmet lo diacha kocho de Rabbi Meir. So it mentions the case of where it was burnt because even to show how far-reaching Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef is the one that said was lenient in the case where you're not sure. Was it burnt before it got dark or after it got dark? And he says it's okay. So even though it was burnt, which is like totally destroyed, he says we consider an eruv. And we have to talk about the case of Tiruma and Nitmet, which is a much lesser form of destruction. And to say that Rabbi Meir says that a safek in that case is no good, even though it's a relatively small problem, still that safek is no good. So that's why we need both of those cases. All right, now the rest of the daf is going to analyze Rabbi Meir. So in our Mishnah, if I'm not sure when something got burnt, I put it there Friday afternoon, I came back the next day, and now I see somehow it got burnt, lightning struck it or something. And so I'm not sure exactly when it happened. Rabbi Meir says, Safek lechumra. I have to assume that it happened before it got dark, and you're no good. You're stuck. Hamar gamal. Now, Rabbi Meir, is that true? Is he generally stringent in cases of doubt? Here's something else he said in a different case. V'hatenan, tameh sheyarad litbol safek tabal safek lo tabal. Afilu tabal safek tabal be'arba'im se'ah safek lo tabal be'arba'im se'ah. V'chen shnei mikvaot. באחת יש ב40 שאה ובאחת אין ב40 שאה. וטבל באחת מהן ואינו יודע באיזה מהן טבל, ספקו טמא. This is a Mishnah. It's a Stam Mishnah. It doesn't say Rabbi Meir's name, but we say that Rabbi Meir is the author of Stam Mishnah, anonymous Mishnayot. So we're assuming that this is Rabbi Meir's opinion. And here you have a case of someone, he's not sure if he went to the mikveh, he or she, right? And so I forgot, I went to the mikveh, I'm not sure. Or he knows he went to the mikveh, but he doesn't know if that mikveh had enough water in it, had the requisite 40 sa'ah or not. Or there was two mikvahot side by side. One was a kosher mikveh, one was not kosher. And he forgot, he didn't know which one he went into. So in all those cases, tameh, right? If he was tameh before and went to this mikveh, he's not sure if he went to mikveh as kosher or not, we assume he's tameh. So look, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, and he says in the case of sefek, he's stringent. But in our Mishnah, it was a case of sefek. We don't know when the eruv got ruined, and he's mekel. So what is it, Rabbi Meir? Oh, so our answer is this Mishnah here is talking about tum'ah that's a stringent form of tum'ah, right? Something that would be like a deoraita level. About betumah kala kegon. So, but if it's a lower level tum'ah, meaning a drabanan, then he would be mekel. So here's the essence. I'll read it in a second. But the essence of the answer is in the case of Eruvin. Eruvin is all drabanan. And so in that case, he's lenient. In the case of Doraita, like this person who was Tameh Doraita, he's going to be stringent. And here's where we can prove it, right? So here's another source of that about Rabbi Meir. About Tumah Kala, Kegon Shachal Ochalin Temein Veshata Mashkin Temein. For example, these are lower level Tumah. If someone eats food, a certain amount of food, half of a loaf of tumah, kohen eats it, or drinks something tameh, then the rabbis decree that person, that kohen, should not eat terumah until he purifies himself. Okay, this is not a doraita law. It's just the truth is that food and drink can very, very rarely make a person tameh. It doesn't work that way. But the rabbis decree that he should stay more away. So in that kind of case where he's not sure, then that's where we're mekel. Abad rosho v'bo b'mayim shubin. Osh naflu al rosho al robo shlosha lugin mayim shubin. V'yadad itbol safek tabal lo safek lo tabal. Afilu tabal safek tabal b'arba'im safek lo tabal b'arba'im sena. Let me explain these cases, right? And so, or a person who put most of his body in drawn water, meaning not a kosher mikveh, or he poured some water on his head. And then he went to the mikveh, or he's not sure if he went to the mikveh. These were gezerot that the rabbis made because there were people that weren't going to the mikveh. They said, I could just pour water on my head, just take a shower and do other things. So the rabbi said, if you do that, not only are you not tahor, but you actually become tameh. So specifically about a kohen who tries to do this. So these are lower level tumah, only midrabanan. And so in this case, if he's not sure if he actually went to the mikveh, someone who's tameh with this light version, or if there were two mikvahot there, and one was kosher and one was not kosher, in all these cases, if he's not sure if he went to the kosher mikveh, it's okay, because his tumah to begin with was only a rabbinic gezerah. And so therefore you see that that's Rabbi Meir, and so this opinion fits with our Mishnah because the eruv is also midrabanan. Okay, in that case, Rabbi Yosef is mitameh. He says impure in such cases. This is interesting because Rabbi Yosef in our Mishnah is mekel. Okay, we're going to deal with that tomorrow, that Rabbi Yosef's contradiction. All right, but still sticking to Rabbi Meir. So now to resolve this, we say Rabbi Meir must think that Techum Shabbat is Deoraita. So, right, again, Rabbi Meir in our Mishnah, Rabbi Meir in our Mishnah said, we're Machmir, right? He's the one that's Machmir. And so here, because it's Deoraita, and here, now we have, okay, right. And here, in the case of Tuma and Tahara, Rabbi Meir agreed that he would be, Safek would be Tameh in the case of Deoraita. But if it was the Rabbanan, then he said Likula, right? And so this is actually a question, right? That Rabbi Meir, on the one hand, in our Mishnah said Machmir, but here, when it comes to the Rabbanan, he's Mekel. And so we assumed first that Techumin is the Rabbanan. And so in order to resolve the problem, we say Rabbi Meir must think that Techumin is Deoraita. This is a machloket in different places, that there are a minority of opinions that think that the law of Techum Shabbat is actually Deoraita. And that's why Rabbi Meir is Machmir. All right, now we got to question this. The Sabat Rabbi Meir Techumin Deoraita, V'atenan, im en yachol lahabli'o, bezo, Amar Rabbi Dostai Bar Yanai Mishum Rabbi Meir Shamati Shemekadderin Beharim. Okay, when you have a case when we're taking measurements for various things, we're measuring boundaries. So if you cannot, if you have a mountain in between that cannot be swallowed by a rope, Rabbi Dostai said in the name of Rabbi Meir says we pierce through the mountain. What is he talking about? When you're measuring for Techum Shabbat and you're going to measure 2,000 amot, so you take a rope, and the law is that if there's an incline, right, you don't have to take into account the surface area of the incline, but rather you can imagine as if let's say there's a mountain between, you can imagine as if the mountain is not there at all. And if you would make a hole right through the mountain and you measure 2,000 amot that way, that's permitted. Okay, so you go by as the crow flies and not by the surface area. And this instead, Rabbi Dostai said this in the name of Rabbi Meir, that I heard that you are allowed to pierce mountains. Now, this law, this leniency, only applies to laws that are midrabanan, as we see as follows. If Rabbi Meir thinks that Techumin, in general, Techum Shabbat is Doraita, would you pierce through the mountain? When you create a city of refuge in a certain area around, or when you have a dead body that's in the middle of nowhere and we're not sure who did it, so we measure the closest city. So let's say there's one city that's closest according to surface area, and another city that's closest if you would pierce the mountains. So the law is in the Deoraita law, we do not pierce the mountains. You have to follow the full surface area. And so you see that in Torah law, you don't pierce the mountains. If Rabbi Meir here says that we do pierce the mountain, we go right straight through. Regarding Techumin, that means he thinks that Techum Shabbat is Midirabanan. And if he thinks that's Midirabanan, then it should be more similar to the light level of Tum'ah. And therefore he should think that a Safek who would be lenient. And that's not what he says in our Mishnah, where he says it's stringent. So how are we going to resolve this? La kashya hadideh hadirabeh. These two statements of Rabbi Meir, one is his own, and one is what he's repeating from his teachers. And in fact, the second one here is what he's repeating. It didn't represent his own opinion. What we see here is that when he said you can pierce the mountains, there Rabbi Meir was saying, I heard, meaning he heard from his teachers. He wasn't saying his own opinion. So his teachers thought it was midrabanan. But Rabbi Meir himself thinks that Techum Shabbat is the Oraita. And because Techum Shabbat is the Oraita, if you're not sure if they came down and got burnt before Shabbat, before dark or after dark, then you should be Machmir. And so that explains his opinion here. Okay, good. Now one last question on Rabbi Meir. Where you have another, yet one more contradiction for him about Rabbi Meir. Ditnan, naga be'echad balayla, ve'eno yodea im hai imet, ulmachad ishkim umsa'o met. Rabbi Meir metaher, hachamim metamein. Shekol atumot keshaat mi si'atan. All right, a little bit of a spooky case. Someone is sleeping in the same near someone else, and he touched him in the middle of the night, and then he wakes up in the morning and finds his friend is dead. Now the question is, when he touched him in the middle of the night, was the person alive or dead? If he was dead when he touched him, then the person's tameh, right? Then the live guy is tameh. If he was still alive when he touched him, it's okay. All right, this probably the person probably has other things to worry about than being tameh or not. He's in the same room after all, whatever. Maybe it's outdoors. I don't know. Okay, so what do we do in a case of safek where I know I touched him, but I don't know if he was alive or dead when I touched him? The Meir says it's okay. Chachamim say it's not okay. Why do Chachamim say not okay? Shekol tumot, anything that is tameh, you always assume that it's tameh since the last time you checked. Right, this relates to a lot of different laws, and so therefore we have an assumption that he's tameh. But Rabbi Meir here is lenient, and so look at that. This is a doraita law, and yet Rabbi Meir, in the case of doubt, is lenient. So how do we resolve this? Amar Rabbi Meir mishnatenu shaya aleh sheretz kol ben Hashem ashot. Oh, so this is a bit of a radical rereading of our Mishnah that says case of the tirumah that became tameh. It's a case where there was a dead rat on the bread during the whole twilight, and so for sure it was tameh. Wait a second, that can't make sense. This is a case of sefek, and Rabbi Yosef was permitted. But if there was a dead rat on it the whole time, there's no safek here. Nobody would say it's kosher. That can't be what he meant. Rabba v'Rab Yosef amret havayu hacha b'shtei kitei edim askinan. Achat omeret mebel jom nitmea, v'achat omeret mishehashecha. Oh, so it's a case where there are two sets of witnesses, and one set of witnesses comes and says, "We saw that bread became tameh before dark." Another set of witnesses come and say, we saw it become tameh after dark. According to the first two witnesses, before dark it became tameh. It's tirumah. Therefore, it's not a good eruv. According to the second one, it is a good eruv, and that's why we have a safek. And in that case, there's no presumption either way. Rava Amar Hatam Tere Chazake Lekula V'Hacha Hada Chazaka Lekula. Oh, so now Rava is going to resolve the difference between our cases. In that case of the dead body, why is Rabbi Meir mekel? Why does he say it's okay? Because I have two chazakot that would permit it. What are the two chazakot? One is that the person was alive when he went to sleep, right? And so we can presume he was alive until we know for sure that he was dead. And the second presumption is when I went to sleep, I was tahor. So you can presume that I am tahor until you prove that whenever I touched him and he is tameh. Therefore, I have two presumptions of tahara. Whereas in our case of the bread and became tameh, so I only have one presumption. And so based on only one presumption, the Rabbi Meir is not going to be lenient, and that's why he is strict in that case. And in that way, we resolved all the problems for the Rabbi Meir, and on tomorrow's daf, we'll be able to resolve the contradictions for the Rabbi Yosef. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen v'amen.